I was a child, World War II had recently ended, and there were many reminders of the conflict. We had few luxuries, and I guess it was then that for my toys I learnt to improvise and adapt whatever came to hand. This habit has remained throughout my life, and I still maintain a very large come-in-handy store of odds and ends. My interest in model aircraft, and real ones of that time, also stem from those early days. My first successful flying model I made at around the age of 10. It was a rubber-powered keelcraft eaglet. This is an eaglet I made 20 years ago, but this one was powered by a very clever Arden unit designed by my friend Godfrey Knight. The Arden unit still employs a band of rubber as its power source.
Now the old eaglet may look nice and shiny from below, but the passing years have heaped their dust upon her topsides, and they're quite torn, as you see here. But I'll just show you how this Arden unit works. Now below the propeller there's a little socket here, and with this crank handle, which is inserted there, you just wind in an anti-clockwise direction. This winds up the elastic, which I'm not going to do too much at the moment because it's rather old. Now before you withdraw the crank handle, you've got to make sure the propeller is engaged with the drive shaft, which is there. That's fine. I'll take out the crank handle, release the propeller, and I think she wants to fly. Well, perhaps sometime in the future we'll let her.
It has reduction gears to extend the flight duration. After so many years, the elastic's still okay. Now, in later life, I've had the desire to have another go at a simple flying model. As the Hawker Hurricane is probably my favourite aircraft, it was this I chose, and with that spirit of improvisation, I entered a sometimes frustrating exercise. For my project, I chose the West Wing's Hawker Hurricane Mark I. From their Wing Leader series, this is a 20-inch wingspan model suitable for modelers of 12 years and upwards. I think I just qualify for that. It is intended for rubber power, but I had other ideas on that score. My first job was to cut out the parts. For this I required the standard A2 cutting board, various blades and medium sandpaper. The parts were then clipped together in matched pairs and sanded to their final contours. Now, just a quick test to make sure the various stringers fit snugly in their slots. For the assembly stage, I had glued a piece of green fibre float panel underlay to a flat board. This fibre underlay is ideal as a base into which pins can be pressed to hold the balsa parts in position. To protect the paper plan from balsa wood cement, a sheet of shiny translucent paper is laid on top. Generally, ordinary greaseproof paper is okay for this, but I have a supply of this stuff which I saved from the self-adhesive mounting boards I used for my art prints. The first parts to be pinned down will form the centre keel of the fuselage. Now the port side fuselage formers are cemented and pinned in position, taking care to keep them perpendicular to the building board. Here I am using the square sides of a new pencil eraser as a guide. The next stage is to start fitting the fuselage stringers. Some of the tighter curves can be achieved by the careful use of a rubber roller. When set, the stringers can be trimmed. After cementing 5 of the main stringers, the port fuselage side can be lifted from the plan. A quick clean-up to get rid of any balsa cement cobwebs, and it's time to consider how the model will be powered. Within my collection of bits and pieces, I had a small radio-controlled helicopter. I had bought this at a boot sale, but it never worked properly. As the motor worked well, I thought I'd try building it into my Hurricane, but the major drawback was the very short range of the radio controller. I decided to do away with this and adapt the wiring for free flight. At this stage I also had to reverse the spin of the motor to match that of the propeller. So far in this video, you will have seen the first stages of that model done in the conventional way. Having built the first half of the fuselage, I had to decide just how and where to install the electric motor. My first idea was to glue it into the fuselage bay forward of the wing root. I needed to keep the drive shaft as short as possible. However, it quickly became apparent that the link between the shaft and propeller would be too unstable. After rethinking, my solution was to place the motor as near the aircraft's desired centre of gravity as possible, and to have an ordinary elastic band as a simple, flexible coupling to the propeller. This required the drive shaft to be bent to make a hook for the elastic band. A quick test showed that the idea worked, so I was then able to position the on-off switch, charging socket and battery. Now I was ready to continue by constructing the remaining half of the fuselage. The first starboard side stringer is important to secure the bulkhead formers at right angles to the keel, in line with their matched port side formers. It's a good idea to let this set before adding further stringers. At this stage, I cemented the small battery in position with balsa wood brackets. When all the stringers were firmly set, it was time to fair off the contours with sandpaper. As suggested in the building instructions, I sanded back the bulkhead formers between the stringers. Hopefully this will give a smoother outer finish when the tissue covering is doped tight.